So our super secret speaker who was supposed to be here at 4 p.m. today, he will be here at 7 p.m. So again, the super secret speaker, Jay Beal, he'll be here at 7 p.m. today. But for now, we have just as good as a speaker and great topic from cross-site scripting to root on your network-attached storage. One of our own volunteers. You'll be out reviewing this talk tomorrow. Tony Martin.
All right, can everybody hear me? Okay, so thank you very much. I am filling in quickly. My talk's going to be still tomorrow, but we're filling in so you guys can hear something, have a talk. And so the title of my talk is From Cross-Site Scripting to Root on Your NAS. A little bit about me. I'm one of the volunteers here at the Packet Hacking Village. I'm a security architect at a large networking company that asked that I don't name who they are, so I like my job. I don't want to get fired. And here's a very shameless self-promotion about myself if you want to find out who I am. And so one of the problems that I have is when I get bored, things tend to get broken. And that can sometimes get me in trouble. So one day I was bored. And so I was sitting at home and I just gotten this new device. This network-attached storage device. Great device. I really like it. Really powerful. Bang for buck. This device was one of the best ones in the market and I still really enjoy it. So I took a look at it, and it has this great user interface, has a lot of apps. And this is where the NASs are going today. It's not just about storage anymore. It's about really a home entertainment and automation system. They have antivirus running. You can attach cameras for doing surveillance, and they have Plex on them, and so they really are expanding their functionality. Of course, with any expanded functionality, we run into a lot of security issues. And so I was playing around and I wanted to say, all right, I'm starting to learn about cross-site scripting. I'm far from elite. I'm just learning myself. So let's see what we can find. And I was poking around in the system and I noticed here in the user interface, there was a section where there was a description. So I took a look in the description and I could make an edit. So when you made an edit in the description field, you can see where it said right there, up there, and right here it says testing. So I said, all right, well, what happens if I start entering a cross-site scripting strings? And so really quick about cross-site scripting, in case anyone's not quite sure. The bad guy is going to enter in a string. The server stores this string. And to the server, it's just a string of characters. This string is delivered to the browser, and that's when bad things happen. The browser sees these strings as HTML as tags, various tags. So you can do HTML injection, so you can break up and make the web page look different by various tags, like in adding tables and whatnot, or you can add in script text. And so then you can run JavaScript at the privilege of the user who's running it. And this is a really bad thing that you don't want happening. So the classic cross-site scripting attack is the alert. And what this will do is when you enter in, and I was expecting it, is if there was a vulnerability, it would pop up a box like this and say, alert 1, there's an issue here. But this is what came up. It was blank. I said, oh. What this pointed to me is they weren't doing the proper type of cross-site filtering protection, which is escaping the characters, and I'll touch on that quickly. What they were doing was a blacklist. So they were looking for characters and for strings and then filtering those out. And this is the surest way to fail at trying to protect yourself against cross-site scripting. So I tried a few other things trying to map their blacklist to say what is their blacklist filter and what does it not filter. And I was doing this stupidly on the admin account. And so I tried this iframe with see if I could get a JavaScript alert through the iframe injection. And you can see it kind of rendered the iframe, and then it just sit there loading data, please wait. And the entire interface froze. In fact, the entire NAS froze, and so I then had to go and do a hard reset. Lesson learned, don't do it when any critical data is in your system. So that was a fun lesson. So I added a temporary user, and I was able to play with them, and still, as long as a temporary user in this NAS is able to select it and at least delete them. So then I was able to play around with the blacklist to find out what's going on. Now, there's a great tool that I use that I like using is called Firebug. And what it allows you to do is built into the web browser, and you can look at the source of the Java, of the HTML source. So you can see what's going on here. So you can see the test here, and it's really hard to see, but you can see that the Java source JavaScript and just how messed up the parsing was. And so this is a great tool to look and inspect what's going on when you're trying to insert cross-site scripting to try and break out of various sections so that you can see what you want to do. Now, what they should have done for the protection of cross-site scripting as compared to a blacklist is they should have been escaping the characters properly. And what that does is when you do the output, you should be converting there's tools to do this, but it'll convert special characters to their proper to an escape sequence. And when the browser sees those escape sequence, it won't translate it to thinking it's supposed to be a script, but then it'll translate it back to be the proper displayed character. Mitigating these can be very dangerous if you try and do this manually. This is just a set from a WASP that said this is one that you really need to be careful when you're doing the mitigations. It's these characters in white space and even Unicode. You have to be careful across all the Unicode sets. But be careful, this might not be enough. So you really want to get the proper type of protection as you want to be doing the proper escaping of your characters in the context that it's being printed out in. Another really quick thing I want to touch on is content security policy. What this is so if I'm embedding scripts, I'm probably pointing them out, or I want to embed my own scripts. And with content security policy headers, you can tell the web browser what scripts to trust and which ones not to. And so this is a good way of preventing cross-site scripting. So really quick, I was taking a look, and so I was playing around, and this NAS had a really interesting behavior. So when I entered an admin here, username admin, and I entered a junk password, what would happen is if the administrator was logged in, right here it would pop up this little warning saying someone attempted to log in with the admin account. And a little notification, and you'd pop up the notification, it would bring up the connection log, and it would give you a warning that someone tried to connect with the admin account. So I said, what could I do with something like this? And I have a little video. Hopefully this won't crash here with any luck. So here I am. I'm in a different web browser. The admin's already logged in, and I'm going to put in a YouTube iframe. And I enter a stupid password, doesn't count, single character, and you wait. There we go. So you saw, and I saw that, wow, well, that's interesting. And so I take a look at the system log, and there it is. But as soon as I hit play, the interesting thing was you'd hit play, and if you'll see, it will reload because it was constantly refreshing. And so this said something very interesting to me. As long as the administrator is logged in, I can potentially inject a cross-site scripting against them, and they don't have to take any action. The interface is automatically going to display it to them. So I said, But I wanted to know what happened to my YouTube video. Why wasn't it playing? So call up... opening up Firebug here, and you can see right there is it was cutting off the characters. What I found out is through that interface, I only had a 30-character interface. So I said, how can I defeat 30 characters and get a good cross-site scripting attack in there? So I said, why not URL forwarder? So these little URL shorteners. So I went over to Trim, and I pointed Trim to one of my own websites. And here's a very, very simple page, and all it's going to do is display hi. So when I entered that in, so here again I have the iframe pointing to the URL shortener, which is pointing to my website, that little HTML page, and it will pop up the iframe with this display hi. I'm like, oh, so now I have the next step of potentially getting in. So if I can display hi and shows it in the system log, what happens if I extend this? So what happens if I put my YouTube iframe right here? And hopefully we can hear this pretty well. Turn up the volume. So here I am, attempting to load in, and come over there and... Yes, you have all now been rickrolled. So that is my talk. Thank you very much. No, just joking. This guy down here gave me a nice dirty look. So I like to use the rickroll whenever I'm doing pen testing at work, because whenever I break someone's system, sometimes egos get involved and people can get a little hurt and get a little defensive. But if I inject this type of a video in their system and they see this playing on their web page, it kind of adds a little bit of, it makes them laugh a bit. So it helps out. The only problem is whenever my kids hear this, I'm at home, they come running and say, Daddy, what did you hack? What did you hack? Because whenever they hear it, for them, it means Daddy hacked something again. For everyone else, it means you rickroll. For them, my kids, it's I'm breaking something yet again. And in fact, my daughter, she's 8-year-old, said, Daddy, what does the rest of the song sound like? So I let her hear it. I started poking around to see, I wanted to see what were the edge interfaces on this device where I could inject this type of an attack into. So not only was the admin HTTP interface, but it was also SSH, SF2P, all the authentication interfaces, and a few more. Here you can see, since it's a NAS, I went through and the attached storage, and I created a file name with this, and so it's from OS X, and I had to do this, and this is what it looked like when the file name was, and it popped up, and you could get through the File Explorer in the system, so an administrator using the File Explorer to look at the files would see Rick Ashley again. And likewise, if you do a hover over, it would also display it. And it worked also for directories, and also in the syslog. So that has a syslog collector. And so this would also display in a syslog, which can be very dangerous because syslog is an unauthenticated system. Anybody can inject syslog messages into a syslog collector. In this case, it would potentially create a cross-site scripting. So I wanted to give a talk here at DEF CON, and if you can't get to root, then, well, it's just not worthwhile. Okay, Rick Ashley's amusing, but you want to be able to get to root. So I have to admit, I did 2 cheats to be able to get this to run. The first was I had to disable NoScript. NoScript protected you from these levels of attack. The second cheat is for Firefox. This wasn't applied to Safari. Is I had to disable active mixed content blocking. And what that is Firefox will enforce if you have a web page that is HTTPS using SSL, that if there's unencrypted data in it, it will block it. Not allow it. So it doesn't allow that type of a mixed content to happen for security reasons. And the reason why I had to disable this is because while Trim, the forwarder that I was using, had HTTPS, the website that I was forwarding to did not. So if I really wanted to be elite, I would have just gone out and gotten a digital certificate or with some website that had SSL enabled, and I could have done that type of a forwarding. So those were the cheats that I did along the way. And here was a tool that I really like using that I use along the way is OWASP Zap. And what I use it for is as a proxy. So I'll point my browser to Zap, and then I'll go to wherever I want to. And what it does is, right here, you'll see it collects all of the various messages that as I'm browsing the website and exercising it, I can see all of these various messages. And if I select one, I can see the cookie data, the post data, here's the URL information. And the really neat thing is if I right-clicked it, I can go to a resend. And it will allow me to edit any of these functional attributes here. Like I can change this sub-function here to hack the function, send that to the server, and then see what happens and see what it does. So I wanted to be able to then, I said, okay, if I want to get to root, can I then potentially get to be able to create an administrator account on the system? So I'm an attacker. I want to be able to get my own admin privileges on the system. So I took a look. I ran here, and here I'm going to create an admin privilege user called temp with a super strong password of a single character. And I'm going to take a look and see what that message looks like here in OWASP Zap. And if we do that, we can see here's the information. It's a create action. We're going to add a user, and right there is the username is temp, and they have the administrator password. But I wanted to be able to, if I'm going to be injecting this, it's a lot easier if I don't have to deal with post data. So I found that if I cut that post data out and I just added onto the URL that was being sent as URL parameters, it took it just fine. And the web server had no problem with it. I got a C data here off past 1, and I go into the system and I see a temp. Great. So for their system for cross-site request forgery protection, what cross-site request forgery is you want to be able to make sure that if I get an administrator click on a URL, that the URL originated from within their own trusted environment, that I just can't get them to click a URL. So what they did here very quickly is we go back, they have here a SID, a session ID. They had a few different session IDs, but in the cookie, they had a session ID here that you needed to post up also in the URL. So if I wanted to be able to actually get this to work, I needed to be able to grab that session ID in the cookie and to be able to send that up. So I need that session ID if I want to build out that URL. So I want to build that URL to add a user. I need to grab that session ID somehow. So going back to my page, instead of displaying a YouTube video, I said, okay, what happens if I do in here alert document cookie? I would embed a script and say alert document cookie. This didn't work. I was learning. So this what prevents you here is called same origin policy. Is because this was running on my web server and not within the NAS. The web server itself, my attacked web server, didn't have access to the NAS's cookie because they had different origins. The script was running in it from a different place, so it didn't have access to it. So I said, how the heck am I going to get into it? I tried all kinds of various things, trying to see if I could pass the document cookie in, but I kept hitting up against that 30-character limit. So I fired up a tool called rat proxy. And rat proxy is a simple tool. You point it, use it as a proxy, and you exercise the web server. And what I found was, here was another cross-site scripting attack. So the prior attack was called a persistent cross-site scripting, where it's stored in the server, so it stays persistent. This one that I found is called a reflective. And in a reflective is pretty simple. Here's an example. You can probably just barely see it, but you can see a slideshow here, an album, and then you put the album name testing, and what it does is it embedded a link, and it repleted that value that I had in the URL of testing. So what this allows me to do now is if I take a look at this, I can then put in, and I figured out the escape sequence, and I can put in this as that album name. And so the reflected information coming back from the server, if I pass this back, was this alert. And what happens when you run it is, it pops up the alert. I say, oh, now I have a potential. So I say, okay, what happens if I do script alert document cookie? It popped up the entire cookie within the context of that of the web server. And you can see in here, my SID that I need to get to is right there. And that's the value. So I wrote this little script right here, very simple, get the document cookie, parse out those values, and do an alert on that SID value that I want to be able to grab. And when you put it down into a single string for the reflective cross-site scripting URL, this is what you get. So now I can get to that SID that I need to be able to add a user. So here's where it gets. This is that URL to add a user. And the username we're going to add here is called test2. And we can see that they have administrator privileges here. I want to be able to embed this URL in my script. So I'm going to take that URL, and you're going to see the SID is blank here. So I want to be able to attach that SID to the end of it, and then refresh, force the user through JavaScript to refresh to this URL, which will then add a user. When I added that into the JavaScript, it blew up because the JavaScript, the URL started to parse these values. So I had to do a URI encoding. So I encoded it so that the web browser wouldn't interpret it. And so this was the JavaScript that I had to add in. So we get over to the SID like we saw earlier. We add that URL, but this is the encoded URL. And when this runs, it's going to decode the URL. We're going to add the SID to the end of it, and then we're going to change the window location. So this is my full reflective cross-site scripting page that I have. And when you run this, this is what will happen. It's going to report this back out, and you look in the system, and it says there's the added user temp2. So let's put all of these steps together now. So I take that reflective cross-site scripting that will add a user. It's going to parse out the cookie, add a user, and I add it to my web page that is going to be forwarded to. And so the steps look like this. I enter into the administrator field that persistent cross-site scripting into the login field. The admin views the cross-site scripting because it automatically pops up as soon as the admin logs in. That's going to load an iframe, which will then load the URL shortener, which points to my offsite file, which will redirect to the reflective cross-site scripting, which will get the cookie, parse out the session ID, build that URL to add a user with admin privileges, redirect and get the user to add that URL, and maybe we get root. So go here. So we're showing here there's no other users. I'm logged in the admin, I only have those 2 users. Go to another web browser, and I trigger off the attack. And wait a little bit. It takes a little bit for it to pop up. There we go. Boom, 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 and you can see that it hit down in the bottom corner. And we just get a refresh going, and we can see that it added the user temp2. So I went then to go, I'm like, all right, I have an admin user. I'm great, I'm excited, and I go to SSH in, and I'm denied. The NAS in question only allowed the administrator through the SSH sessions. You couldn't add someone else. And to be able to do it, I started doing some research. I would have had to have installed a whole bunch of code, and I just could not figure it out a way to do this. And so I'm kind of strange. My wife can testify that. And it's her birthday, by the way. I'm saying happy birthday to her earlier. And so I'm moping around the house for a few days because I couldn't get to root. I was so close. I was like, oh, man, I'm ruined. I'm not going to be able to get a talk because I really wanted to be able to give a talk here. And I was so moping around, and I'm thinking to myself, and I thought, you know what, there's always a different way. Let's just start exploring. So one of the ways I said is, what happens if I could hijack the administrator account? That's a potential way. So I looked at the administrator account, say, let's see if I can get to the password. So a typical change of password is on the system, you enter the old password, enter in the new password twice to do the verification, and it comes up. And what it looked like when I looked at using, taking a look at the post data, as we can see here, username admin, the password, the new password, the old password, and this value popped up at me and said needs check equal yes. Uh-oh, why do I have to tell the system that it needs to do the check? That doesn't look right to me. So I went in as the admin, and I said, okay, what happens if I change another person's password, like temp2? I don't need to enter in temp2 old password because I'm the admin, and so I can just change it. And so what it looks like is this. Username temp2, just a password, there's a blank old password, and need check equals no. I said, oh, what happens if you then just change username to admin? And so I just changed the username to admin, and I came back with auth passed. And what I found was that you could, as any user, change anybody else's password on the system. So as a low privilege user, I could change even the admin's password. And so this is what it looked like. If I want to change the user admin's account, I could change the password, and you can see it's a really, really super strong password of a single character. So let's chain this all together. So again, this very similar steps. We're going to enter persistent cross-site scripting into the login field. The admin views this cross-site scripting. It loads the iframe, which trim is then going to forward off to my offsite redirect file. The offsite file is going to redirect to this reflective cross-site scripting attack, which is going to get the cookie, parse out the SID, build the URL to change the admin password, redirect, and let's see if we can get to root. And over here, where's my mouse? There it is. All right, so I'm in the web browser, I'm going to log in as admin, and it's a 5-character password. It was admin. Remember, I had to reset my system. I didn't even bother changing the password because I was just playing around with it, and I didn't have any data on it anymore. Well, the data was still fine, but so going to another web browser, I'm going to trigger the attack. Go back to the admin, and sometimes it takes a little while for this to pop up. So we just be a little patient, and I'll grab the water. There we go. So there we go. This is supposed to have triggered the attack. We go back to the other web browser. We attempt to log in as admin with our super strong password, and we're in. But we still want root, so go in there, log in as admin, password with root, and we're in. And who am I? I am admin. And if we take a look in there, admin is user 00. So this is how, on this device, I was able to get from the cross-site scripting be able to get to root. So I now have my getting to root, so I have now a potential talk for DEF CON, but I need to get a cool name, because you know what? All these other attacks, all these other guys are having all these cool names out there, Heartbleed and Poodle and Ghost, so I need a cool name myself. So I took a look, and I said, these are all the things that I was doing. So I was doing a remote out cross-site scripting exploit. These are all the various keywords. So I tried all kinds of different looking ones. So I came up with this one, remote access to own a NAS. Reason, well, that's not too bad. And if we wanted to use cross-site scripting, so it would have been cross-site scripting remote access to own a NAS. Oh, all right, well, let's see what else I can find. There was an authenticated root access to own a NAS, arson. A friend of mine, Beavis, got into some trouble for similar words. You could get into X-arson, which I thought was also pretty cool, but I want to explore some more. There was remote cross-site exploit to own a NAS, Exxon. Might run into a little bit of problems with some big company out there, might not liking that one. This one came up with Texas, but I didn't think my attack was quite big enough for that one. We have my exploit has a name, methane. A friend of mine said that one stunk, so I passed on that one. I kind of like this one. Cool hackers name their exploits. This wasn't bad, called him cheap. It kind of is fairly applicable at this point. But even a bit better, cool hackers exploit names, and that's what I've seen, case in time, cheapen. And then the another case was cool hackers name their exploits, Kane, but I couldn't figure anything out for Able, and that's already been used some time ago. And so I came up with this one, was need exploit name to be cool, or neon tool. I was like, I like that one. So I ran over, looked at it, I could find neon tool. Neon tool was available, I registered it, and now I have neontool.com. And my wife, when she found out about this, asked me, how much did that one cost? I was like, I love you, hon. Never. So I first reported the problems to the company, the first series of problems on March 30. That was, and a follow-ons on April 21 and May 22. They're a small company. Well, none of these guys are super huge, and it took a little bit of time till I was able to get them involved. But when I did get them engaged, I got to their security people. They were great, working directly with me. And then it was about mid-July that they got me the builds. But I was really, really sweating because they didn't get the fix posted until August 5th. And I'm like, guys, where's it posting? I want to be able to talk about this. I didn't tell them that I was going to withdraw the talk if they didn't get posted, but I would have, because it just wouldn't have been very ethical to have done that. But they did get it posted. Very excited. And I tested most of them, and it looks like everything was able to be fixed. I wasn't able to test a couple final, but they did assure me that it was tested, because they only posted it while I was here. So we'll see. My device is back home. So a lot of the purpose of this talk isn't to say, all right, wow, you hacked this nice, this must be a bad company. No. All devices out there have exploits. A lot of them have problems. A lot of these companies don't have the skills that we see here in the crowds out there. So if you're sitting at home and you have these devices, poke at them, be bored, play with them. All you're doing, and find the problems, try and break it, and record it. Because I broke things, and I didn't record it, and then trying to recreate it could be difficult at times to remember what I had done. And then report this to the company so that these devices can get more secure. Work with them. And somewhere in there, maybe you're going to profit, I don't know. As you guys might have noticed, I never said the name of the company because that's not the point. But here I am going to say, I want to say a thank you to QNAP, because now they have a much more secure device. They worked with me. They have a much more secure device. I love that device. It's still, I think, the best being in the market for it. I also want to thank everyone here. I'm a volunteer here. We've been a great time. I've just been enjoying it. My family for putting up with me and everything else. And so if you have any questions, I'm going to take them offline. I'll be around, and I'm not leaving. Thank you very much.